And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld, taking you through to that closing bell. It's the global simulcast. Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, they join us now. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms, television, radio, our partnership with YouTube on what is setting up to be a historic day on a couple of fronts. Stocks yet again at record highs, and a very intriguing 30-year bond auction today, where we actually saw the highest yield given to bidders since 2007.
Yeah, it does seem like, you know, in terms of a higher rate environment, I know everybody points to the war, but I just feel like rather than the idea of any kind of Fed cut at any moment in time, anytime soon, I think that's just not going to happen. Everything seems to point to a higher inflationary environment globally. And so get ready for higher rates, certainly across the U.S. curve, but maybe some other curves around the world.
Well, speaking of the Fed, that's, Romaine, where I thought you were going to go, a historic day because of the confirmation of Kevin Warsh. It's the slimmest confirmation margin ever for the head of the central bank, and the controversial leadership transition as well.
But you know what that means? He's Fed chair.
Almost, not
can
quite.
I just push back on what you said, though, Carol, too? Because,
What?
I mean, you're seeing today that divergence in yields, with short-term yields moving lower. Obviously, the yields that the Fed has more control over. And, of course, the long-term yields, as Katie pointed out at the top of our show, now, basically above 5%.
It is interesting to see that steepener come back, at least for today. But, I mean, at least the conversations that you and I have been having, Romaine, that's not necessarily where people think it's going to go. That, you think about the short end sort of being stuck if this Fed isn't able to cut rates. That seems to be turning into maybe the redefined Kevin Warsh trade.
Absolutely. Here, you're seeing, we talk a lot about the K-shaped economy. You're seeing a K-shape in stock markets, and now you're starting to see it play out in Treasury markets as well as we get the closing bells here in New York. The Dow Jones Industrial Average sitting this one out. It's going to close lower, only by about 66 points, or about 0.1%. The S&P 500 closes right around 7,444, up about 0.6%. The Nasdaq Composite up more than 300 points, or 1.2%. The Nasdaq 100 up roughly about the same amount on a percentage basis. Those are going to be record highs. And the Russell 2000, we'll just call it unchanged on the day. It's higher in the green, but only by about 1 point, or less than 0.1%.
All right, going back to the S&P 500, most names in the index actually lower today, Katie, about 329 losing ground on this Wednesday, 172 to the upside, 2 unchanged.
Interesting, because you did see a little bit more breadth in a green direction when it comes to the sector level. You had 6 sectors in the green. It was 7, but just flipped at the last moment here, 5 in the red. In terms of what's leading this market higher, communication services, a lot of those gains actually coming from Alphabet. Information technology higher by about 1% as well. That is the big, bright slice of green that you see on your screen. In terms of what didn't perform today, utilities down about 1.3%, typically a defensive type of sector, so it makes sense. Financials and real estate also bringing up the rear, Carol.
All right, lots of green there. So let's go to some of the top gainers on my list today. Ford, got to mention Ford, number one gainer in the S&P 500. That stock up more than 13%. Shares surging in the biggest one-day gain since March of 2020. A bullish call from Morgan Stanley on the automaker drew investor attention to the company's energy storage business. Not necessarily something we talk about a lot, but maybe we should. Here's what the Morgan Stanley analyst Andrew Percoco said. He said, "We believe that there is a fairly high likelihood that Ford signs an energy storage system supply agreement with large commercial customers and potentially hyperscalers over the next few months." So playing into the AI trade, keep in mind that Ford did do a deal with the Chinese battery technology behemoth Contemporary Ampherics Technology, or CATL. And the analyst saying it is an underappreciated strategic competitive advantage for its energy storage business. I thought what was interesting is that he estimated that Ford Energy could be worth $10 billion and sees opportunity for the valuation to approach that of Tesla Energy.
Well, I was about to say, this is kind of intriguing to me, because wasn't that, this has always been the narrative, I don't say always, but it's been the narrative for a long time about Tesla. And it kind of makes you wonder why we didn't hear about this, not only for Ford, but even GM, which also has similar capabilities.
I agree with you. I feel like it snuck up. And why isn't it maybe talked about a little bit more, right, when Ford talks about earnings and so on and so forth. But anyway, investors noticing, and the stock up more than 13%. Just quick, I want to mention the semiconductor space, because we did get a bounce back. Certainly in the SOX, up about 2.5% as a whole today on semiconductor. I believe it closed at a record today. That name on semi was up about 11%. Sorry, I couldn't see that. And so that one was charging ahead pretty much at its best levels of the session. And I think it was the number 2 gainer in the NASDAQ 100. You had Nvidia higher as well, up about 2.25%, and then the stocks up about 2.5%. Shares in chip makers, opticals, photonics firms gaining a supply for global memory chips, key to, of course, those AI build-outs, the infrastructure build-outs, tightens further. The sector also getting a boost as Nvidia's Jensen joined President Donald Trump on his visit to China.
Yeah,
anyway,
what happened there? I thought he wasn't going. Now he's going?
I don't know. I guess
there?
I don't know.
Yeah, you go to Alaska and you pick up Jensen.
Yeah, and, Elon.
That's the way it works.
And Elon apparently, right?
Yeah.
Although
he
Elon
was going from the
He's
beginning.
always going.
Yeah.
Don't you read our stories?
Yeah, I do, but I think didn't Elon come out on social and say I was the only one who picked up in Alaska? Or something?
I pay attention to what crosses the Bloomberg terminal.
All right.
That's
well,
your social media.
Yeah.
crossing the Bloomberg terminal, some notable decliners today.
Nice.
Nicely done.
I want to start with shares of Dynatrace, the infrastructure software company, fell by 11.4% today. This after the company reported fourth quarter results that were actually better than expected. It was the outlook for adjusted first quarter earnings that was slightly weaker. The stock getting hit today, down 11.4%. How about an IPO?
How about it?
How about it?
It didn't do too
GMR
well.
Solutions.
Ooh.
Maybe it
Yeah.
says, maybe not. How about it?
Started trading today, down 6.8% on the first day of trading. It's a KKR-backed ambulance firm. Shares fell after a $979 million raise and a downsized IPO and private placement of warrants. It's the largest provider of emergency medical services. It's got a market value of just about $3 billion based on outstanding shares listed in its filing. So once again, GMR Solutions Inc. falling 6.8% today on its first day.
And we're going to talk to
trading.
the CEO a little bit later on the close. this
Oh,
afternoon. Yeah.
Nice.
okay. Well, ask
Well
about
done.
the performance.
Yeah.
It'll come up.
Thank
What
you.
happened?
This one's for Romaine.
Oh, boy.
Because I know that he's a big Birkenstock guy.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
We've
Gotta be-
already
Did you
made these
know that
jokes.
you can actually wear Birkenstocks with suits if you're Romaine Bostick?
I don't think you can
I
do
don't,
that.
well, you can. I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Oh.
But maybe that would help actually boost their earnings and revenue, which of course came in just a little bit light. Tim, I got to pivot away from that.
Come on,
though.
Romaine. You just don't want me to talk about you.
I don't. We got to get to Cisco. Those earnings crossing the wire right now. Those shares up about 4% in the after hours trade, despite the company actually cutting its full year revenue forecast. I'm going to start with the most recent quarter. In the third quarter, the company did beat on adjusted EPS $1.06. It did beat on revenue at $15.84 billion, just slightly. The company says that for the fiscal fourth quarter, it sees revenue in a range of $16.7 to $16.9 billion. That's above the $15.82 billion that the street was looking for. Adjusted EPS, a range of $1.16 to $1.18. That's well above what the street was looking for at $1.07. Now, here's the bugaboo. When you sort of average that all out, for the full year, the company now says that revenue will be in a range of $61.2 billion to $61.7 billion. And that looks like that could come in a little bit light than what the street was looking for. Similar story on the EPS side, 413 to 417, with the average estimate being 416.
You know, what's interesting, too, looking at the commentary, $5.3 billion of orders taken year to date, raising expected fiscal year 26 orders to $9 billion, up from $5 billion. That seems like a big bump up. Yeah?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is a company that obviously has found its products, I should say, have actually found a new lease on life, given the big infrastructure build out in the AI and really the broader data center space here. And I think what everybody really wants to see, and we should point out, I mean, we're in that fiscal fourth quarter right now. So they're basically providing full year guidance for a year that's almost over. I think the real question is what happens over the next couple of years with regards to the growth trajectory.
Yeah, fourth quarter revenue forecast topping estimates. Fourth quarter adjusted earnings per share, $4.27 to $4.29. This is the redhead. The estimate is for $4.16. That fourth quarter outlook above consensus. Third quarter services revenue coming in slightly below estimates, Katie.
Yeah, and you can see shares now higher by about 5% after hours. It's going to be interesting to get to that earnings call expected at about 4:30. It's going to be particularly interesting to see what they say and what they're asked about memory prices. We know that when it comes to this record run that we're seeing for Cisco, that, you know, Wall Street has highlighted maybe memory prices as something that could spoil the party a little bit there. So definitely something to listen out for.
Absolutely. Let's check in on the yield space real quick here before we get back to what's been happening in the equity space here. All the talk today was about the longer end of the curve here. You had a 30-year Treasury auction today that basically came in It bid on 5.04 and change here. That was the highest that the Treasury Department had to offer to bidders since 2007. Believe it or not, you're getting paid 5% on your 30-year, 5% on your 20-year. Your 10-year yield, though, still camped out at 4.47. And take note of the shorter end of the curve, the part, of course, that Kevin Warsh and the Fed controls. That is lower on the day by about 1 basis point.
Yeah, it kind of gets interesting, right, when you compare that to maybe, returns in terms of equities. So it certainly gets fascinating to kind of watch this development. Hey, by the way, Cisco's up now more than 9% here in the aftermarket. So quite a pop here.